The protagonist of the story begins his journey as a nobody, meeting his end in obscurity. However, fate grants him a second chance as he is reborn into the body of a nobleman, inheriting a dilapidated territory riddled with corruption, starvation, and enemies lurking at every corner. Armed with the knowledge from his previous life, he sets out to build an army, industrialize his land, and create a kingdom that will rise against all odds. The story begins with a doctor urgently calling for assistance and instructing a team to place a patient on a ventilator. Meanwhile, Yen struggles to breathe, his chest heaving as his heart pounds erratically, teetering on the edge of failure. A dedicated industrial and mechanical designer for 2 decades, Yen finds himself at the brink of life and death. Despite his tireless efforts, his career has brought little fulfillment, and loneliness has shadowed him all his life. This relentless drive has finally taken its toll, shattering his mental health and leaving him in a perilous state. From the moment he was born, Yan's life had been marked by tragedy. A car accident claimed his parents, forcing him to navigate the world as an orphan. Still, he pressed forward, holding on to the hope that his efforts would one day be recognized. That day never came. After graduating, he secured a low-paying job that barely allowed him to survive for 20 years. His personal life was equally bleak. He had never experienced companionship, not even the simple act of holding someone's hand. Now, it seemed his solitary existence was drawing to a close. As his closest friend called out to him, filled with worry, Yen began to question the meaning of his life. Was there any worth to such an existence? Overwhelmed by exhaustion, he thought to himself, maybe I'll just take a little nap. When Yen opened his eyes, he found himself in a setting beyond imagination, a room of extraordinary luxury adorned with silk curtains and dazzling crystal lights. Panic set in as he momentarily thought he had somehow squandered his life savings on an extravagant hospital room. Then, a notification appeared before him, "Welcome to the magical continent of Elda." A wave of realization struck him. Could this be one of those isekai scenarios from fiction? In this unfamiliar world, Yen discovered he now went by the name Ren. Bewildered, he struggled to make sense of the situation, but answers eluded him. Over the course of a week, Ren began piecing together his new reality. He had died and been reincarnated as Ren Edgar, the third son of the powerful Duke of the Allen Edgar family. His new family welcomed him warmly. His older sister doted on him, ensuring he never went hungry, while his brother presented him with a vial of magical water, purchased at great expense, to enhance his magical abilities. Even his mother contributed to his care, gifting him handmade clothes and encouraging him to try them on. As the youngest and most cherished member of the family, Ren lived in unparalleled comfort, a far cry from the struggles of his past life. Despite the luxury surrounding him, Ren couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in this new world. He questioned why he had been granted such blessings, reasoning that perhaps they were compensation for the hardships he endured in his previous life. The world of Elda was an enchanting place, where magic fueled every aspect of life. The Coral Empire, the largest human nation on the continent, was a diverse realm, home to elves, dwarves, and other races. The Edgar family held significant influence, governing a vast territory spanning 300,000 square kilometers, complete with fertile fields, a grand castle, and a population of over 1 million. Although Ren had everything he could ever desire, fine clothes, personal servants, and a life of privilege, his reflection in the mirror haunted him. Yan's face stared back, a constant reminder of the man he used to be. One day, Ren's introspection was interrupted by Leah, a lively and cheerful maid, who informed him that his father wished to see him. She led him to the study, where his father, Aline, was engrossed in reports about their lands. Ren greeted his father with the polished courtesy expected of a nobleman and waited for him to speak. Aline regarded him with a serious expression before finally asking, "Do you know why I called for you?" The gravity of the moment made Ren uneasy, and he quietly admitted, "No, I don't, father." The Duke leaned back in his chair, his stern demeanor softening slightly. "Ren, you've reached the age to manage your own territory. Have you thought about where you'd like it to be?" Ren was taken aback. His surprise quickly turned to confusion as he hesitantly asked about inheriting land. Aline sighed at his son's lack of understanding and explained that it was customary for nobles of his age to take charge of a territory. Rising from his chair, the Duke approached a large map hanging on the wall. "The land you'll oversee is in the northwest. It's relatively safe, but the lack of mages has made food shortages a persistent problem." His tone grew more somber as he added, "While our territory is stable for now." The future of the Coral Empire was uncertain, and Ren silently agreed with his father's assessment. The decline of the royal family and the erosion of the political system had left the empire fractured. Lords engaged in endless rivalries and conspiracies, creating a dangerous web of competition that only grew more tangled with time. Since his rebirth, Ren had experienced a level of care and affection he had never known before. This newfound love gave him a strong determination to protect those who genuinely cared for him. Noticing his son deep in thought, Aline grew concerned, wondering if he was placing too much responsibility on Ren. To reassure him, the Duke reminded Ren that he was not alone. He had the support of his older brother, sister, and father. However, Ren seemed to have an idea forming in his mind. With newfound determination, he asked his father if solving the food supply issue would make their territory safer. Aline smiled at Ren's enthusiasm but warned him that the issue was far more complex than he imagined. It required not only passion but also careful planning and gradual implementation. Ren, however, wasn't thinking simplistically. Drawing from his knowledge of humanity's industrial revolutions, he confidently declared that he would take on the responsibility of resolving the food crisis. Ren's journey to his new domain began. The remote territory assigned to him, Island City, was a land of immense potential but riddled with challenges. To the north, it bordered the territory of Grand Duke Ryan, a sworn adversary. To the west lay the mysterious lands of the elves, while to the south stretched the vast, uncharted ocean. Strategically located, the territory had frequently been a battleground, leaving its fertile lands barren, its population sparse, and its resources depleted. As the carriage carried him toward Island City, Ren immersed himself in documents detailing the state of his new domain. Leah, his loyal companion, watched him with concern etched on her face. Ren knew that revitalizing the territory required increasing its population. A strong workforce was essential for an industrial revolution. Though the task was daunting, Ren was confident in his abilities and the knowledge he had brought from his past life. Ren wasn't starting from scratch. Among his assets was a special skill granted to him by the system, Human Resource Scan. This ability allowed him to identify talented individuals with ease. Having tested the skill on his family, Ren had gained a clear understanding of the world's talent standards. His first priority upon arriving in Island City was to identify extraordinary individuals who could help him restore the territory. Meanwhile, Leah recalled the Duke's instructions: support Ren and ensure he didn't create chaos in the region. Silently, she prayed that he wouldn't make a mess of things. In Island City, tension filled the Lord's residence. A visibly anxious man reported that the Duke's youngest son would be arriving soon and suggested taking preemptive action. However, a masked man seated across from him dismissed the concern with cold indifference, instructing them to wait for further orders and leave Ren unharmed for now. Despite his calm demeanor, the masked man seethed with anger as he spoke of making Aline pay for past transgressions. Nearby, a blonde-haired man nervously fretted over falsified financial records and embezzled taxes. The masked man, however, laughed mockingly, dismissing Ren as a naive playboy who would never notice such details. "All we need to do is hand him some irrelevant documents upon his arrival," he sneered. Reluctantly, the blonde-haired man obeyed and began preparing for Ren's reception. As Ren's carriage approached the outskirts of Island City, he peered out at the barren fields and abandoned farmlands. His expression turned serious as he surveyed the desolate scene. Requesting a map from Leah, he examined the area closely, focusing on the river to the west and the harbor to the south. An idea struck him: dredging the river and constructing a canal to connect it to the sea could breathe new life into the land. Ren's thoughts were interrupted by a desperate cry. A young girl knelt in the dirt, clutching the leg of a man, likely her father, who seemed intent on heading to a gambling den. Tearfully, she begged him not to gamble away the last of their money, which was meant for her mother's treatment. Her voice trembled as she explained that losing the money would doom her ailing mother. Consumed by greed, the man roared at the girl to let go. Blinded by his confidence in his luck, he ignored her desperation. When she refused to release him, he raised his hand in anger, preparing to strike her. Before the blow could land, Ren intervened. With a swift punch, he sent the man sprawling to the ground. Fury burned in Ren's eyes, though he winced immediately. This was, after all, the first time he had ever thrown a punch. Leah rushed to Ren's side, concern evident on her face. Gently scolding him, she remarked, "Next time you plan to hit someone, at least warn me so I can bring protective gear." Ren chuckled, brushing off her concern. He explained that the punch had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, leaving no time for preparation. As they spoke, Ren strode toward the man still sprawled on the ground, instructing Leah to check on the girl while he dealt with the gambler. The man, still clutching his face, stared up at Ren in shock. Ren's gaze was piercing, filled with contempt as he berated the gambler for taking money meant for his family and gambling it away, even resorting to hitting his own daughter. The gambler scowled, trying to defend himself, and demanded to know who Ren thought he was to meddle in his affairs. Ren stepped closer, his presence commanding and intimidating. In a cold, unwavering tone, he warned the man that it didn't matter who he was. If he caught him near a gambling den again, the consequences would be dire. Ren's threatening demeanor drained the color from the man's face. Stammering, the gambler promised to stay away from gambling dens and quickly fled the scene. Satisfied with how he handled the situation, Ren turned back to the girl, who stood frozen in shock. Concerned, he asked if she was all right and activated his system to check her condition. The girl, whose name was Lillian, bowed her head deeply in gratitude, thanking Ren profusely. She explained that losing the money would have meant losing the chance to save her mother's life. As Ren examined the system screen, he was intrigued to see her stats. Most were unremarkable, but one unique attribute caught his attention: her exceptional potential in agriculture and harvesting. Recognizing this hidden talent, Ren immediately decided to recruit her for his plans to revitalize the territory. Smiling warmly, he guessed that Lillian had likely been heading into the city to find a doctor for her mother. He invited her to join his group, explaining that they were also on their way to the city. Lillian hesitated, worried about dirtying his carriage, but Ren reassured her with a calm smile. He told her that a carriage was merely a vehicle, just planks of wood pieced together, and that concepts like clean or dirty didn't matter when it came to transportation. Besides, he had a few questions for her. Suddenly, Ren's tone grew serious. He questioned why a gambling den existed in such a poverty-stricken area. He recalled the recent hardships faced by the region. The previous fall, soldiers sent by Grand Duke Ryan had attacked, causing significant casualties. Then, early in the spring, devastating floods had ravaged the land, leaving its people struggling to survive. The streets of Island City bore the scars of these calamities, with beggars lining the roads and despair evident everywhere. Walking through the ruined streets, Ren decided that conducting a full population census would be essential to assess the remaining productive workforce. First, however, he planned to visit the city lord's manor to review the reserve funds and determine how much could be allocated to infrastructure improvements. Ren asked Lillian for the manor's location, but before she could answer, a sudden shout interrupted their conversation. A blonde-haired man on horseback charged recklessly down the street, shouting for people to move out of his way. His actions were careless and dangerous, causing chaos as pedestrians scrambled to avoid him. Leah reacted quickly, pulling Ren aside just in time to avoid the galloping horse. The rider disappeared into the distance, unconcerned about the commotion he had caused. Leah, however, glared furiously after him, silently vowing that anyone who dared harm Ren deserved the harshest punishment. Her protective grip on Ren tightened, leaving him struggling to breathe. He finally managed to get her attention, and she quickly released him, apologizing and asking if he was hurt. Ren reassured her with a smile, expressing his gratitude for her quick actions. Turning serious again, he asked Lillian if she recognized the rider. Trembling, she explained that the man was the young master of the Elwyn family, a wealthy clan that owned all the gambling dens in Island City. Ren's expression shifted to one of interest. If the Elwyn family was wealthy, it presented an opportunity to fund his plans. He asked Lillian to take him to one of the gambling dens, but she tried to dissuade him, worried that he would lose all his money. Ren, however, remained confident, assuring her that the gambling den wouldn't be taking anything from him. Watching his determined figure, Lillian couldn't help but wonder who this noble young man truly was. Soon, Ren arrived at the gambling den. The building stood out starkly against its surroundings, its opulence flaunting the vast disparity between wealth and poverty. Guards were stationed at the entrance, but Ren approached without hesitation. A faint smile crossed his lips as he considered his plans. He intended to take everything from this place to fund his industrial projects. Inside, the den was a chaotic mix of noise and desperation. Gamblers pleaded for loans, certain they could win back their losses in the next round. Others celebrated fleeting victories or lamented crushing defeats. Ren observed the scene critically, realizing that as long as this gambling den existed, the people of Island City would lack the motivation to work diligently. Leah leaned close to Ren, her voice low and cautious, as she informed him that their soldiers had surrounded the gambling den. She asked if they should proceed. Maintaining his calm demeanor, Ren told her to wait. He had his sights set on an even bigger target. As Ren stood there, a staff member from the gambling den approached him with a polite smile, asking what game the young master would like to play. Ren smiled back, feigning inexperience, and admitted that he wasn't very familiar with gambling but wanted to try a few rounds. Sensing an easy mark, the staff member suggested a dice game and handed Ren 2 complimentary chips, claiming they were free for him to try his luck. Ren accepted the chips with a seemingly pleased expression, and the game began. He casually tossed the 2 chips onto a small betting slot. Watching this, 2 casino staff members exchanged smug glances, confident in their scheme. The dice rolled quickly, landing on 6 and 6 big. Feigning sympathy, the attendant consoled Ren, claiming he had been close to winning. Ren played his part perfectly, expressing surprise at how quickly the game ended. He remarked that the game wasn't very entertaining and turned to leave, saying he felt hungry. Before he could leave, the attendant stepped in front of him, blocking his way. The man's polite demeanor vanished, replaced with a mocking tone as he demanded payment for the chips Ren had used. Frowning, Ren feigned confusion, asking when he had agreed to owe anything. The attendant sneered and explained that the chips were not gifts but loans. He added that each chip was worth 100 gold coins, and with processing fees and interest, Ren now owed 250 gold coins. Smirking, the attendant suggested that if Ren couldn't pay, he could leave his maid as collateral. Outraged, Lillian quickly spoke up. She accused the attendant of lying and explained to Ren that the chips were worth no more than a silver coin each. Furious that his scam had been exposed, the attendant shouted for the guards to beat her. Before he could finish his command, Ren struck him with a powerful punch, sending the man flying backward into a nearby table. Adjusting his clothes calmly, Ren remarked, "Someone like you has no authority to speak here." The casino erupted into chaos as gamblers scrambled to snatch up the chips scattered across the floor. Ren sighed, muttering to himself that none of these people were of any use. Suddenly, a commanding voice boomed through the room, demanding to know who was causing trouble. The speaker was none other than the man Ren had encountered earlier on horseback, the young master of the Elwyn family. A sly smile played on Ren's lips. He had finally lured in the bigger fish. The man's arrival instantly silenced the pandemonium. His glare swept across the room with disdain before he barked an order for his guards to teach the troublemakers a lesson. Without hesitation, the guards began beating those nearby, ignoring their cries for mercy. The remaining crowd stood frozen, watching in fear, too terrified to intervene. The young master sneered at the onlookers, threatening them to stay in line or face the same brutal fate. Lillian, clutching Leah's arm tightly, whispered in shame that this was all her fault. She blamed herself for leading Ren and Leah to the gambling den and for putting them in danger. She recalled how Ren had personally taken her mother to the hospital, ensuring her treatment and promising to cover all the costs. The memory stirred her resolve. Filled with determination, Lillian stepped forward, her small frame trembling but her voice unwavering. She declared that she wouldn't allow anyone to scam her brother. Her boldness stunned the room, drawing everyone's attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people speculated about who she was and how she dared to challenge the young master of the Elwyn family. Weo, the young master, stared at her coldly, his eyes darkening with rage at her defiance. Lillian stood her ground, accusing him of using the casino to exploit and ruin families. She refused to let him bully Ren and Leah, calling them good people who didn't deserve such treatment. Enraged, Weo lunged at her. Despite her fear, Lillian didn't flinch, shielding Ren with her small frame. Before Weo could reach her, Ren stepped in, intercepting the attack and grabbing Weo's arm. Calmly, Ren activated his system skill to assess Weo's stats. The results revealed low attributes, a pitiful 5 loyalty points, and a personality steeped in cruelty and bloodlust. Ren instantly recognized the Elwyn family as a potential threat, unreliable and prone to betrayal at any moment. Blocked, Weo glared at Ren and accused him of breaking the casino's rules. Ren released his grip and replied coolly, stating that he understood the rules perfectly. In this world, power dictated everything, and the strong made the rules. Weo sneered arrogantly, fully convinced of his superiority as the most powerful man in the city. He taunted Ren, questioning why he still dared to oppose him and asking if he even knew who he was. Ren's expression didn't waver. With unwavering confidence, he responded, "I don't need to know who you are. The only thing that matters is my strength. My fist is bigger, and my word is the law." With that, Ren clapped his hands, signaling his soldiers to storm into the casino. The scene shifted to a grand banquet held in Ren's honor, a gathering of the city's most prominent and influential figures, each with their own hidden agendas. Among the attendees was Lucas, the head of a prestigious family, who had intended to use Weo to establish a connection with Ren that he could later exploit. However, Weo's absence puzzled him. Frustrated, Lucas realized he couldn't rely solely on the incompetence of the city lord and would need to adapt his plans. As the banquet hall buzzed with quiet murmurs, a loud voice suddenly announced Ren's arrival. The atmosphere shifted instantly, growing tense and silent as Ren entered the room. His commanding presence drew every eye, and the guests quickly adjusted their postures and expressions. The head of the Raven family was the first to step forward, introducing himself and presenting a gift to Ren. Another guest, the head of the Jose family, eagerly introduced his daughter, hoping to curry favor with the young nobleman. However, Ren's sharp expression silenced the room as he raised a hand and instructed everyone to quiet down. With the room now still, Ren declared that it was time to officially begin. He gestured for his attendants to bring in a large blueprint, an unusual object that immediately captured everyone's attention. Pointing to the blueprint, Ren explained that it was a design for a dam, which he had sketched earlier that afternoon. He mentioned his intention to enlist skilled craftsmen for its construction to finalize the finer details. The room erupted into murmurs as the attendees exchanged confused glances. Someone asked aloud what a dam was, speculating whether it was a tool for fishing. Ren quickly called for silence and instructed Leah to display a map of the region. With everyone's attention now on him, Ren began his presentation. He explained that during his survey of Island City earlier that day, he had identified the root cause of the city's annual flooding, a poorly managed canal in the far north. By building a dam at this location, they could control the water flow, using it to irrigate fields during the dry season and releasing excess water during the rainy season. The rainy season would no longer bring floods, Ren concluded, as he wrapped up his explanation of the dam's benefits. Lucas, listening intently, couldn't help but be impressed by the ingenuity of the plan. He realized that if the dam were successfully constructed, it would dramatically boost the city's food production. For the first time, he acknowledged that Ren possessed a sharp and innovative mind. An older man in the audience, skeptical, asked how the project concerned them. Ren, maintaining his composure, calmly explained that he needed their investments to fund the dam's construction. This statement caused an uproar among the nobles, sparking a wave of protests. Many grumbled loudly, claiming they were too poor to contribute. Lucas, however, remained silent, carefully observing. Privately, he thought Ren was intelligent but naive to believe these opportunistic nobles would willingly part with their wealth for the good of the city. But Ren wasn't as naive as they assumed. Smiling confidently, he addressed the room, telling them there was no need to pretend to be poor. He had a plan to make everyone a fortune. Ren revealed that earlier that afternoon, he had seized a casino and confiscated nearly 50,000 gold coins. He hinted that there were several more casinos in Island City that were ripe for similar action. The revelation left the nobles stunned, their minds racing as they processed the implications. Some murmured nervously, wondering if their shares in casino profits were now lost. Others worried that the seized casino might have been one of their investments. The crowd quickly realized that the largest casino in Island City belonged to Lord Andrin, one of the most powerful figures in the region. This meant that Ren had likely made a dangerous enemy. Lucas, his calm facade masking growing fury, stepped forward to confront Ren. He accused Ren of acting unlawfully by dismantling a legitimate business without authorization. Lucas emphasized the importance of upholding the Coral Empire's laws and warned Ren of the consequences of his reckless actions. Others in the crowd rallied behind Lucas's objections, growing more emboldened by his words. They accused Ren of overstepping his authority, pointing out that casinos were legal businesses. The atmosphere became tense as the nobles voiced their dissatisfaction. Ren, however, remained unfazed. His calm demeanor didn't waver as he addressed the room. He pointed out the hypocrisy of the nobles. When he asked for investments, they had claimed to be poor, but now that he mentioned the potential for profit, they suddenly showed concern. He accused them of being complicit in the casino operations and warned that this was their last chance to save their reputations. If they refused to cooperate, he would intervene personally. As Ren's voice dropped, his soldiers stepped forward, their presence a stark reminder of the authority Ren now wielded. The nobles grew visibly uneasy. Lucas, speaking for the group, insisted that the Grand Duke would never condone Ren's reckless actions. Others pleaded with Ren to reconsider his approach, urging him to act with restraint. Ren smiled faintly, his plan unfolding perfectly. With an air of authority, he announced that he would gladly discuss the law with them. His voice calm but commanding, he gave the order to bring in those who would help clarify the situation. The room fell silent. Unease rippled through the crowd as they waited to see what Ren had planned next. At his command, 2 men were dragged into the room, bound and gagged, unable to speak. Lucas's eyes widened slightly, though he quickly masked his reaction. These 2 men were always by his son Weo's side. Their unexpected appearance left him uneasy, and he began to suspect that something had happened to his son. Ren, maintaining his composed demeanor, turned to Lucas and asked if he recognized the men. Lucas, keeping his expression neutral, denied any knowledge of them and asked what Ren was implying. Ren smiled lightly, reassuring Lucas not to be so tense. He explained that it wasn't a big deal, these 2 men had simply tried to assassinate him the previous day. Ren's gaze sharpened as he glanced pointedly at Lucas and added that the men had claimed to control Island City and hinted at having a powerful backer. Lucas's expression darkened as beads of sweat formed on his brow. Though he worked hard to maintain his composure, it was clear that Ren's words had unsettled him. Ren then ordered his soldiers to untie the 2 men, suggesting they let the party guests see if anyone recognized them. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, many of them instantly identifying the men as Weo's attendants. Fear gripped the room as the implications of Ren's words became clear. Lucas, realizing the gravity of the situation, acted without hesitation. Grabbing a dagger from the banquet table, he lunged at the two men with a fury that stunned the onlookers. He denounced them as wretched commoners who dared to attack the Duke's son and swiftly killed them both. Blood pooled on the floor as the room fell into a horrified silence. The other nobles watched, too afraid to intervene. Standing over the bodies, Lucas turned to Ren with a feigned look of shame. He apologized profusely, claiming that he had acted out of anger upon hearing about the assassination attempt. He begged for Ren's forgiveness. Ren, who had anticipated this move, smiled knowingly. He praised Lucas for his sense of justice, commending him as a noble who acted decisively. Lucas, masking his relief, thanked Ren for the compliment, stating that he had only done what was necessary. But Ren wasn't finished. Calmly, he ordered his soldiers to bring in the mastermind behind the attempted assassination, stating that he wanted to see if there were any other nobles in the room as principled as Lucas. Lucas tensed immediately, his composure slipping as Weo, his son, was dragged into the room. Completely unaware of the situation, Weo shouted angrily at the soldiers, demanding they untie him. Weo boasted about his father's influence, threatening that everyone present would regret their actions once he was free. Lucas's confident demeanor faltered as he took in the sight of his son, and any arrogance in his expression disappeared. He finally understood why Weo had been absent from the banquet. Weo, seeing his two attendants lying lifeless on the ground, erupted in rage. He hurled insults at Ren and threatened him with torture once he was released. Ren, unfazed by the outburst, chuckled and sarcastically remarked that not only did Weo want him dead, but he also seemed determined to make his suffering as prolonged as possible. Ignoring Ren's composure, Weo continued his tirade, boasting that no one in Isen dared to challenge him and that Ren's death was inevitable. Turning to Lucas, Ren asked if he shared his son's views. Weo, still oblivious to Ren's true identity, laughed mockingly and continued to ridicule him. Just as Weo was about to reveal Lucas's identity, his father sharply cut him off. Lucas, now desperate, scolded his son, calling him disobedient. He ordered Weo to kneel before Ren, and when his son hesitated, Lucas forced him to the ground, kneeling alongside him. Pleading for mercy, Lucas begged Ren for forgiveness and offered all his possessions in exchange for Weo's life. It was only then that Weo realized his mistake. He recalled his father's instructions to befriend the Duke's son, and fear crept into his eyes as the realization of Ren's identity dawned on him. Stammering, Weo apologized and vowed never to act so foolishly again. Ren's expression remained cold as he told Weo that his soldiers and authority were proof enough of his status. Lucas joined in, swearing the Elwyn family's loyalty to Ren and offering to surrender all their ill-gotten assets. Ren, unmoved, accepted Lucas's offer to relinquish the assets, assuring him that if he complied, his family would remain safe. Relieved, Lucas expressed his gratitude. However, as he glanced at the city lord, he recognized that his own influence had greatly diminished. Knowing he had little choice, Lucas leaned closer to Ren and whispered about a conspiracy against the Duke. He revealed that Lord Eldry had been colluding with external enemies to betray the city. The revelation shocked the room, and all eyes turned to Eldry, who stood frozen in fear. Lucas was about to elaborate, but Ren interrupted sharply, accusing him of slandering Eldry and declaring that he had already shown enough leniency. Ren ordered his guards to drag Lucas and Weo out for execution. Lucas, stunned and terrified, was unable to comprehend Ren's sudden shift in demeanor. Meanwhile, Eldry, relieved by Ren's apparent defense, stepped forward to pledge his loyalty, praising Ren's wisdom and promising unwavering support. Ren smiled and assured Eldry that he trusted him completely. However, using his system, Ren secretly analyzed Eldry's attributes. Among ordinary stats, he noted the trait of greed and a loyalty level of only 15. Ren concluded that Eldry, like Lucas, would eventually need to be eliminated. For now, however, Ren resolved to use Eldry's resources to further his plans. After the banquet ended, Ren worked late into the night. The nobles had contributed over 100,000 gold coins, an amount equivalent to 2 years' worth of taxes from the city of Isen. Yet, despite the impressive sum, Ren remained unsatisfied. As he focused on his work, Leah entered the room carrying a cup of tea. She set it on his desk and observed his displeased expression. Ren took the tea and bitterly commented, questioning whether Leah understood the vast wealth the nobles truly possessed. Leah didn't respond directly. Instead, she raised a more pressing concern, asking what Ren planned to do about Lucas's revelation at the banquet. If the city lord, Eldry, truly intended to betray them, it would place Ren in grave danger. Ren reassured her, urging her to remain calm. He admitted that he was certain of Eldry's betrayal but explained that it wasn't yet the right time to act. When Leah pressed for an explanation, Ren stretched and stood, explaining that Eldri's full network of influence in Isen was still unclear. Acting too soon could lead to unnecessary chaos. For now, it was better to let Eldri believe Ren was an ignorant young lord, oblivious to the threats surrounding him. The next morning, Eldri met with Guildmaster Malcolm at the Mages Guild. He handed Malcolm a piece of paper, and upon reading it, the Guildmaster's face contorted with fury. Malcolm slammed the paper onto the table, calling the situation absurd. Eldri, calm and calculating, urged him not to overreact, dismissing Ren as a young and overeager noble trying to prove himself to the Grand Duke. Malcolm, however, was not appeased. His irritation mounted as he reminded Eldri that even the Grand Duke treated the Mages Guild with respect. Eldri, inwardly pleased with Malcolm's anger, celebrated the opportunity Ren had inadvertently provided. He believed Ren's actions would alienate him, allowing Eldri to gain favor with the guild, something he had previously been unable to accomplish. As Malcolm stormed out with the paper, swearing to demand an explanation from Ren, Eldri silently rejoiced, confident that Ren would soon find himself isolated. Meanwhile, Ren was in his study, sketching plans for a hydraulic construction project. The work reminded him of the hardships he had endured in his previous life. Leah entered to inform him of an unexpected visitor. Guildmaster Malcolm had arrived and was demanding to see him. Surprised, Ren went to the parlor to meet him. The moment Ren entered, Malcolm angrily confronted him, slamming a recruitment notice onto the table. He accused Ren of insulting the Mages Guild. Confused, Ren asked for clarification. Malcolm pointed to the notice, which stated that no mages, disabled individuals, or the elderly would be hired for Ren's project. He demanded to know why Ren had issued such an exclusionary notice. Examining the paper, Ren calmly explained that it was related to the dam construction project and saw no connection between the notice and any insult to the guild. Malcolm, however, disagreed, accusing Ren of blatant provocation. He argued that excluding mages was a sign of disrespect toward the guild and its members. Taken aback, Ren was surprised that mages would even be interested in manual labor jobs. Still fuming, Malcolm warned Ren that without a satisfactory explanation, all mages in the guild would refuse to serve him. Frowning, Ren silently called on his system to analyze Malcolm's stats. The system revealed that Malcolm's loyalty level was 82 and described his personality as inquisitive and straightforward. Ren concluded that Malcolm had been manipulated. Smiling, Ren patiently began to explain his reasoning, outlining 3 key points. First, he noted that mages had limited mana and could only perform a small amount of work each day, making them ill-suited for large-scale construction. The second reason for opposition was that the mages' salaries were equivalent to those of 10 common laborers, making them unaffordable. Third, as a noble, Ren believed it was his responsibility to prioritize the well-being of ordinary people who lacked the support of the guild. Malcolm, however, remained unconvinced. He argued that magic was highly revered in their society and that those without magical talent deserved to be beneath the feet of mages. Annoyed by this viewpoint, Ren acknowledged that it might reflect the current reality but firmly declared his intention to change it. He announced that, starting in Iceland, he would prove mages were no different from regular humans. Malcolm, feeling insulted, issued an ultimatum, demanding that Ren retract his statement or face the consequences of defying the Mages Guild. Ren's expression turned icy as he warned Malcolm to watch his tone. Leah, who was standing nearby, pressed a knife to Malcolm's throat, her gaze menacing. Frozen with fear, Malcolm listened as Ren calmly reminded him that nobles had the legal right to punish disrespect, even suggesting they test the law with a small cut to see which side the court would favor. Trembling, Malcolm quickly apologized, admitting his error and pleading for forgiveness. Ren, observing that Malcolm's loyalty remained intact, concluded that the guild master had acted out of ignorance rather than malice. Choosing not to escalate the matter, Ren instructed Leah to escort Malcolm out. Malcolm expressed his thanks and hastily departed. As Malcolm left, Ren was notified by the system that a beginner task had been completed. He had used the investigation function on 10 individuals. A reward was granted, and a new task appeared, to train 5 characters with high stats. Satisfied with his progress, Ren decided to review his rewards later. Outside the estate, Eldri awaited Malcolm. The moment he saw the guild master, he approached, feigning concern, and asked how the meeting had gone. Malcolm, still humiliated, sighed and revealed that Ren had refused to listen and had even thrown him out. Frustrated but quick to recover, Eldri devised another plan. He assured Malcolm that he had a solution, one that would not only make Ren change his mind but also force him to revere the Mages Guild. After his initial plan failed, Eldri proposed a new strategy, manipulating the townsfolk into refusing to work for Ren, thereby pressuring him to seek the guild's assistance. However, Malcolm immediately rejected this idea, pointing out that Ren had offered excellent working conditions that the townsfolk were unlikely to turn down. Undeterred, Eldry suggested another approach. If Ren's workers were portrayed as lazy and unproductive, he might grow disillusioned with commoners altogether. Malcolm dismissed this suggestion as well, explaining that his grievance stemmed from Ren's refusal to hire mages, not from dissatisfaction with commoners. Nevertheless, Eldry persisted, arguing that the townsfolk's inherent laziness was the reason for their poverty and hardships. He reasoned that if the land couldn't yield crops, they should take the initiative to hunt for food, rather than remain idle. Reluctantly, Malcolm agreed to give Eldry's plan a try. Meanwhile, Ren's recruitment notice was posted in the town center, quickly drawing a crowd. The townsfolk gathered to read the announcement, curious about the new lord's plans and his call for workers. They were shocked to find the job offered an 8-hour workday, 3 daily meals, and a wage of 10 coins per day. A young man in the crowd voiced his skepticism, questioning why the new lord was being so generous. Others shared his doubts, recalling past instances when nobles had deceived them. Some warned that working under such terms could be risky, potentially costing them their lives. At that moment, Leland stepped forward and spoke passionately in Ren's defense, asserting that he had promised to improve everyone's lives. However, her sincerity was met with laughter and ridicule. The crowd dismissed her words as naive, mocking her for trusting a noble. Even Leland's father joined in, accusing her of being bewitched by Ren. Ignoring her father's accusations and the jeers of the crowd, Leland announced her intention to register for the dam project. The recruiter, a young man overseeing the registration process, remained composed despite the skepticism. Turning to Leland's father, he invited him to work on the dam but stated that Leland herself was not eligible to participate. Confused, Leland demanded an explanation, insisting that she was healthy and capable. The recruiter clarified that Ren had imposed strict rules prohibiting anyone under the age of 18 from working and emphasized that hiring underage workers without Ren's approval would result in severe penalties. Handing Leland's father a registration form, he reiterated the terms 3 meals a day, an 8-hour workday, and a wage of 10 coins per day. He then invited Leland's father to sign the form and begin work the next day. Though slightly disappointed, Leland encouraged her father to do his best and avoid slacking off. Smiling warmly, her father patted her head and reassured her. He vowed to avoid gambling and promised not to let Ren down. He also reminded Leland to stay home and care for her mother, who was unable to perform strenuous tasks due to illness. Before they could leave, the recruiter called them back. Surprised, Leland's father asked if there was a problem. Looking concerned, the recruiter mentioned that he had overheard the father say his wife was gravely ill. Leland's father quickly clarified that his wife was indeed unable to work due to her condition. Smiling kindly, the recruiter reassured him that he wasn't asking her to work. He explained that Ren had arranged temporary housing in dormitories for the families of workers during the dam project. Once the project was completed, families could return to their original homes. Overcome with emotion, Leland's father fell to his knees and expressed his heartfelt gratitude to the recruiter. The young man quickly helped him up, insisting that such gestures were unnecessary. He then offered to show them a room where they could stay and allowed them to choose their accommodations. The surrounding townsfolk, who had witnessed the exchange, were astonished. They began to realize that Ren's promises were genuine.